All right, welcome to Hawk Podcast 22. Today we're going to take a break from our normal routine of talking about the data center industry and the market. We're talking a little bit about leadership. Specifically, ask David some questions about how his leadership style has evolved over the years. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do in our Hawk Talk podcast with industry leaders is a lot of times you ask them, hey, how has your leadership style evolved? And I think you've gotten some really cool answers over the years. And again, some of those people have influenced your leadership style as well. So, that may be something we could splice together, Red, and maybe put together like a best of. I think that'd be really neat. Before we jump in, I got a couple things just announced that we got going around here. We recently launched a new blog called Data Center Fundamentals.
Yeah.
And so, contrary to popular belief, and something we're going to learn about today is that you were not born with innate data center knowledge.
You know, I know I trick everybody. They think
do.
I just came out of the womb knowing about KW and megawatts and all that stuff. No, there definitely was a process for that. So we have tried to create a blog series that would allow those that are new in the industry to just quickly get up to speed with, hey, what is a data center? What is colocation? What is cloud? And just the basics of the data center space so that you can kind of build a foundation and the fundamentals of moving forward in the industry and how that would our goal is to help people kind of speed up that process, the educational process.
And that's really based on, I think, feedback that we've gotten from our customers, plus people that we know are on the site that are very new to the industry and have said, hey, somewhat not afraid to raise their hand, but we just know there's a lot of people on the site that need that information. Yeah. So it's a little bit like Vince Lombardi, this is a football, this is a data center. And in fact, the first blog post was entitled, "What is a data center?" So there you go. Great information. That's right. And again, it's important, similar to that Vince Lombardi speech, to get the fundamentals right before you build on it.
Yeah, and before you get into some of our other content, which is very deep market analysis, trends in the space. We did 5 predictions for 2020, what's happening in the space. And so to not understand those basics before you hear that could be challenging.
Sure. So again, plenty of people come on the site and they go right to 11.
Yep.
The knobs turn
it up, bro. That's like you when you work out, Mike.
I don't know about that. It's like a 3.5. But then again, plenty of people who just need to know it or a refresher. So look for that. If you missed it, check out podcast 21, PTC wrap up. I know that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And again, a ton of people out there, great conversations you had, and then hyperscale predictions for 2020. And then lastly, we recently recorded a Hawk Talk with Eddie Shooter, the CTO of Switch. So take a look for that to be coming out shortly. All right, but up next is Podcast 22, Liggett on Leadership.
Let's go.
Well, David, I'm really looking forward to this podcast. You and I have had a lot of conversations over the years about what it means to be a good leader.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to talking with you about how your leadership style evolved over the years. What were the key people and places that shaped your philosophy? One of the things, quickly, a definition I read about leadership, I thought this was great. It says, a great leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He's the one that gets people to do the greatest things.
Huh,
so
that's
I think,
good.
We're going to see that. I think it'll come through in what you share. But let's start at the beginning. Coming out of college, you went to, I think, maybe something that maybe not a lot of people on this podcast are aware of. It's a faith-based sports camp called Kanakuk.
Yeah.
And you worked with a guy named Joe White. You've talked about him a lot.
Sure.
So talk about that experience that you were there for 5 years. What was that experience like? What were some things you took away from that experience from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, no, great question. I think that everybody can kind of look back on life experiences and probably look at the things that have maybe impacted them the most. And if you haven't, you should, because it's a good exercise. And I will tell you that the 5 years out of college, so my wife and I, we went to Baylor, graduated, and then when I was in college, I was actually working in the summers at this sports camp for kids. So it was a camp for 13 to 18-year-olds, and we were using sports to spend time with kids, love them, encourage them in their faith, and just to be people that represented great things. And so did that in college, and then out of college had the opportunity to go work there full time. So my wife and I actually moved to Missouri, lived there for 5 years. We spent a significant amount of time during the year. A lot of people are like, well, okay, what would you do during the year? It was like, kids aren't there during the year. So we traveled a bunch around the U.S. and would interview college students to come and work there in the summer, and then also recruit kids to come as campers. And so, this is a big sports camp. I mean, there's 8 different camps within the organization, and they'll see 20,000 kids a summer. So the camp that I was at, again, 13 to 18-year-olds, I was one of the directors there and just had a phenomenal experience.
So what did your like weekly cadence look like?
Yeah.
I know you've shared it with me, and it's very, very different than I think what we're experiencing
I always laugh if you're a data center industry professional, this will be a little different. The podcast is going to be different. I mean, we're not talking about data center fundamentals or market analysis. We're talking about leadership, but I always say if I could take someone today in my current world, what we do data center wise, into that world for one day, it would blow their mind. And if I could take one person in the, sports camp, faith-based world into this world, it would blow their mind too, just because there's two totally different worlds and focuses as it relates to like what you're doing during the day. And so, over a week in the summer, I mean, we would be with the kids. So I came out of high school and played football. And so that was kind of that's where my head goes from a sports perspective. I loved coaching kids through that. So during the week, I'd help coach our football specialty. So teenagers, and these are kids that were trying to play high school, wanted to go on to play college. We'd go recruit college age students to come, like D1 athletes, to come and help teach football with us. So, certainly is. So that's what I would do during the week with kids. And then I'd also just meet with them, help them process through things they were going on back home. We'd speak about different issues and topics that they were working through. A teenager would be working through appropriately. And so it was phenomenal, not just from the opportunity to get to do something like that at that age, but also just to get to think about like your impact on other people. And at that point in my life, my sphere of influence, everybody has a sphere of influence. Mine was, teenage kids from across the U.S. and also college students from across the U.S. And so during the week, in the summer, you'd spend obviously with kids. And then during the year, we'd travel a bunch. And then we'd also, you're seeing, 3,000 to 4,000 kids through that camp a summer. So there's plenty to do during the year to help get ready, planning programs, activities, et cetera. So that's what we do.
And one of the people whose sphere of influence you were in was Joe White, the guy who was running, who was your boss when you were there. He's still there.
Yep.
So I know you've talked about him a lot of times to me, but he was a very unique individual.
Yes.
So talk about what made him unique and what were some of the things he did that rubbed off on you.
Yeah, you bet. So if you know Kanakuk as a camp, you know Joe White as it relates to his impact. This sports camp I was at, the 30-second history, it started in 1926, and it was one camp until 1978. And then Joe got involved and basically turned that into 6 or 7 different camps. Camps are different term lengths, different focuses for kids. But I think getting to work alongside him for 5 years, and it was an incredible time, a very refining time for me, because he was somebody that led by example. Was an encourager, when we talk about leadership, we talk about servant leadership. It's a biblical concept. It's a business concept. It's something that people talk about. It's another thing to see a leader of an organization actually do that. Literally do it. And his ability to do that, when a leader in an organization represents those attributes, whatever they are, they just trickle down to different parts of the organization. And so anyway, working with him was awesome. And when I think about some of the things that he was able, and like I said, if you know Joe, people are going to nod their heads and go, absolutely, like they would agree, because he's done this with others. But a couple things that he did that I thought were really impactful to me. One is he would make, every organization has like a hierarchy of, order, right? Yep. You've got the leader all the way down to the bottom. And so one of the things that he was able to do that was incredibly impactful was that lowest level, that person, he would make you feel like if you, your job was the most important job in the organization. And if you weren't able to complete that job, the organization was going to fall apart. So what you have is people working with extreme, excitement into what they're doing, regardless of what level they were at. So it was really cool to watch that.
I was watching the Oscars last night, and they were interviewing James Cameron. And he said when he was 14 years old, his biology teacher, of all people, said, hey, you should start a film class or a film club. Yeah. And he goes, you have unlimited potential. And he goes, when you're 14 years old and someone tells you have unlimited potential, you believe it.
Yeah. So
that sounds like a lot what Joe's doing. It's
and that's
speaking life and power into these kids.
Yeah, that's another thing. Leaders, you oftentimes are able, you see potential in people that they don't. And I think, that was a big thing that Joe did with me is like just on kind of, I was 22 to 27 when I worked there. So, very formidable and kind of, just married, learning how to work, a lot of the fundamentals around, working hard and those type of things. And so I think he was able to see things about me that I couldn't see myself. And just, as you mentioned, like breathe life into that. And so, I think about the leadership opportunities we have as people in our work, people in our communities, people in our churches, people wherever it might be, in our neighborhoods, on our street, to be able to do that with others, it's incredibly valuable. And a lot of times we're too busy. We're too distracted. I'm David Liggett speaking here. I mean, it's very easy to go to lose sight of that. And when you really break things down, that's one of the most important things we could be doing with other people. And that's a method of encouragement, right? It's to help people see things. But anyway, Joe did that. And then I got to share this story with him, about him. So so we built this house in Missouri, and we had these huge oak trees in our front yard. And so every fall, the leaves would fall, and there was just tons of leaves. And so one day at 4, I got a call from him. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm working for you in my office." And he's like, "Hey, let's go. We're gonna go blow the leaves out of your yard." So it's like, okay. So anyway, he comes by our house, or he comes by my office, picks me up. He's got 2 of those backpack leaf blowers, the powerful ones that make you just feel good when you are doing them. And we spend probably 2 hours in my front yard blowing leaves down this hill. We built our house on this. It was kind of like a, kind of little hill, so you just kind of blow the leaves down the hill. So anyway, we spent 2 hours doing this. And 6, my wife and I, we had a dinner, something we had to go to. And so I said, "Hey, Joe, thank you so much. I'll take this, and I'll finish up later." And he goes, "Oh, no, y'all go ahead. I'm gonna keep going." I was like, "No, seriously, you cannot keep, this is not something you should be doing." He's like, No, I got it. So anyway, we go to dinner, come back. I guess it was a quick dinner. It was about an hour or so later. And he was still out there, and he had finished the whole thing. And so I always think about, when you're in a leadership position, your ability to, serve others in little ways and big ways it's life impacting. I mean, this is the stuff that, I look at that and I go, okay, if I'm ever going to go lead an organization or do something, that's how I would want to be. I would want to do that for the people that I work with.
And, you talked about that phrase servant leadership, which you think a lot of people give lip service to.
Yeah.
But one of the talks I've heard our pastor give, he says, here's these things we say we believe.
Yeah.
And they get together as a staff on a weekly basis, and they actually will go around the room and talk about how they've lived that out in the week. He says, if you don't do that, they're not actual values; they're aspirational values.
You bet.
And so I think there's a lot of folks who there's a gap between the actual and the aspirational between what they say they believe. And so it sounds like Joe did a really great job of modeling for you. Hey, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is, and I'm gonna put my leaf blower where my mouth is.
Yeah, put it into play. And he also valued people that the world probably wouldn't value. If you're talking to him, you're the most important person in the room. I mean, he's the leader of this is a big organization. I remember one time we were about to catch a plane to go somewhere. We were getting lunch somewhere at a store where they make your sandwich. You tell them what you want, like a Subway almost, And by the time the lady that was making his sandwich had finished the line, he had knew her name, knew where she was from, knew about her, all in the span of while she's putting tomatoes on his sandwich and all that stuff. So anyway, it was just there were just little things like that along the way that were impactful for me and made me realize that there's much bigger things going on besides ambition to start a company or to grow something real big and all these different things. You go, hey, at the end of the day, what matters most? Relationships and how you treat people along the way. So anyway, that's my time at Kanakuk was phenomenal. Another cool thing is that there's that I'm experiencing now is that there's kids that I saw when they were 12 and I was probably 20. I'm a little older now, but now they're leading organizations. They're moms and dads. They're workers in the workforce doing different things, and so it's been really fun for me to get to hear people at our church speak and think about, man, 20 years ago, we were pouring into that guy, somewhere in Missouri, and now he's doing, X, Y, and Z. So it's just been really fun to get to see that.
And that's a great, I think, encouragement for young leaders is to say, hey, you may not see immediate transformational results when you're pouring into people in your organization. I think I shared a story with you. I'll share it quickly. My dad took a new job. I think it was about my age, back in the early 90s, and he kind of butted heads with this guy, and then that guy ended up leaving, going to a different organization. I'm not joking. 30 years later, almost 28 years later, writes him a letter, says, "Hey, I know we didn't see eye to eye." And he's like, "I've done a lot of stuff in the last 30 years. I went to law school, now I'm in seminary." And he goes, like, "I look back at that time and I really appreciate the way that you interacted with me, even though we didn't see eye to eye."
Sure.
And so I think that helps me have hope when I'm talking to folks and saying, like, especially when it's a hard conversation. Say, you know what? I'm going to do my very best to act with integrity here. And if the results don't turn out the way they want, like, my hope is that 5, 10, 15 years down the road, that person can look back and go, "I didn't get it, now I get it.
Yeah.
I didn't get it then, I get it now."
Yeah. And the business world is full of hard conversations. Our world, I mean, doing what I've done over the past 5 years, and it's like you wake up with 100 problems, and 100 things.
You sure it's not 99 problems?
Sure.
Okay.
But
either rounding error.
Yes, but and so in order to deal with those effectively and with the right mindset, I mean, you have to have a greater vision, and if you don't, it's really hard to accomplish what you're trying to do.
Sure.
And treat people the way you want to, treat them down the road. So,
all right. So after 5 years at Kanakuk, you took what I will consider is the most hardest of hard left turns. It landed at CBRE in the brokerage world. Not initially doing data center work. Yeah. But that's what eventually led to you getting involved with data centers. So very different environment. So a couple things. How did you take some of the things you learned at Kanakuk and bring them into that corporate world? And then what were some of the new things that you learned in that time at CBRE? What 7 or 8 years there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just anything you start to do it's hard work. I mean, if you want to like do something that people haven't done before, you haven't done before, you've got to work hard at it. And this is probably it's easier said than done for people today, especially in our culture, because I think most people want to arrive a lot quicker than they probably do naturally, and they want results faster than it takes to get them. But so one thing was just hard work. I mean, I feel like I worked extremely hard when I was at Kanakuk, and the hours that we would keep and the things that we'd have to do, and just some of the professionalism I learned. I mean, listen, there's people here that are hearing, "Oh, you used to work at a camp," and they have something in their head of what that means. What it meant to me was it was a professional environment. I mean, and we would, and during the summer, I mean, it was extremely tiring. We'd run hard. So anyway, we worked really hard. So that was one thing. I was like, I just looked at this as another place to work hard. And so that was one of the things that I saw. The other thing I thought about, like the toughest audience I've ever had in my life, like I've done a lot of, 3 things now out of college. I mean, worked at Kanakuk, worked at CBRE, and now datacenterHawk. The toughest audience I've ever had is teenagers. If you can capture the minds and attention of teenagers, like that is the challenge of all challenges. And I've got one living in my home now, so I know that is the case. And so I think, that was one thing that kind of, I think, prepared me for what we were doing in the real estate business, just trying to understand who's our audience. And I think great leaders understand their audience really well, and they understand what their audience is trying to achieve, and then figuring out how to, help them the most and in the most appropriate way. So I think that's part of it. And then also too, I mean, I learned a lot about just business at Kanakuk, and it was a ministry, but just about what are we trying to accomplish? If you have a project you're trying to complete, how do you get to the finish line? How do you, reverse engineer it back to make sure that you can hit the steps that you need to complete your task or goal or whatever it is? How to deal with people. I mean, we talk about this a lot at our company now today is, we're not looking for people that are just smart in what they do. You can have a lot of smart people that do dumb things. But we want smart people that can work together, that understand how to do what they're doing to help other parts of the organization. We brought up a good example this morning in a meeting we had of going, hey, we're trying to coordinate things across different parts of our company, and it takes people that are humble, that listen to other people's feedback, that understand the total, what we're trying to do. So all those things I learned there, and they just transferred over. I mean, it was I would just almost laugh a couple years into that to my role in the commercial real estate business is how much I did previous in a totally different capacity, transferred over pretty naturally. And then about a year in, got involved in the data center business, just by accident, which most people, if you talk about, like, most people in the industry, if you're listening right now, you've got some unique story about how you plugged in. It's like I was doing, battery work for this company, and then all of a sudden we opened up to the data center industry, and that became one of our core business lines, or, whatever the story is. And so that was really what, I think those were the things that really transferred over. And I've really tried to, whenever people do what we're doing right now, which is talking about a theoretical concept, it's really easy to think the people that are talking based on their comments have it together, have figured it out, believe that they have. And I just want to be very clear that is not the case for me. I know it's not the case for you. We've talked about this.
I've heard the phrase, leaders aren't born, they're forged.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing simple, quick,
yes,
or easy about that process. Yeah. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of intentionality.
Yes.
I also think of like that quote from Good Will Hunting. You want to ask you about love and you quote me Shakespeare. Ask you about leadership, you quote me Jim Collins.
Sure.
But have you really lived it? Have you gone through those 10,000 hours, all the reps needed to hone your leadership, philosophy and practice?
Sure. And I still think it's I've reached the pinnacle of 40, and I still feel
it's all downhill from here.
I know, that's what I hear.
Sorry.
But I feel like every day is, it's probably the older you get, the more you realize you don't know.
Sure.
But it's just that process of, trying to understand different ways to do it better, and understanding where you didn't hit the mark. And, and I think, and then, and so I think my time at CBRE was really interesting because it helped me see how those values, what I learned at Kanakuk, really transferred over. And, it just made me realize like how important people are. I mean, this whole thing, it's people, and it's how well you treat them, how, much you value others, that really, at the end of the day, makes the biggest difference, in my opinion.
So then through the rest of that time at CBRE, like, who are the people and maybe some of the experiences that shaped you as a leader to get you to the point ultimately where you said, you know what, I'm going to start my own company.
Yeah.
And that's an Indiana Jones moment where you're stepping and you don't see the little bridge, but you think it's there.
That's the Last Crusade.
It's the faith, yes.
Yes, I remember
Great
that.
movie. And so, you got to that point. So how did you get to that point?
Yeah, sure. So I had, and I love talking about my time at CBRE because it was great. I mean, the people that I was able to work with there, the leadership that was in place, it was awesome for me to get to spend time and see how a corporate company casts their vision, executes their vision, works within different teams. And so that was a great process for me. The team that I was on started in the data center space probably like 2008, and it was a really young time in our business. We talk about the data center industry is still young, but back then it was very young. We were just coming into a really hard time as it related to the capital markets. So the economy was going south, and we were focusing on an asset class that was rather small. But the neat thing is that's the time that it really started to grow. So we were, I always say, like front row seats, almost not intentionally, to this time period where the industry has done what it's done over the last 10 years, and it has grown exponentially. And so I think, there's a couple things that happened in that. Number one is I recognized that this was almost like a ghost industry where it was really hard to understand where things were, how much they cost. There were weird components. Electricity was a big part of the discussion and the cost analysis. So that was one thing. And then the second was it served something that was so important for all companies. This isn't like part of a company that if it goes down, it's not a big deal. This is critical to a company's success. And so you put those two together, I always felt like there was an opportunity to entrepreneurial create something that was missing from our industry. And so and I've always had an entrepreneurial background. I love thinking about inefficient processes and making them better and kind of dreaming up the vision behind that. Now, there's a big difference between dreaming up the vision and actually going and executing it. A lot of people have ideas, and this was kind of the thing, like a lot of people have ideas. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have told me, oh, yeah, I was going to do something like that, or, oh, yeah, that's a great, but once I got comfortable, I literally said to myself, I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, literally, like, and I had a great, my time at CBRE was awesome. I mean, the team I was working for, I still have great relationships with those team members. I love them. I mean, they were great to work with. The leader that leads that business, I think, is a great friend of mine. So leaving was hard relationally, but once I got comfortable with like failing, and that's not normally like comfortable for me. I mean, I like to go, and I mean, I like to.
All you do is win.
I don't. Well, that's not true, but I don't like to. My natural tendency is like I don't.
Some people
like to
accept
fail.
losing more easily than others, and you are not one of those people.
So.
You mentioned, what's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
So I think that harkens back to a conversation you had probably 2 years before starting the company. Talk about who was that with, where was that conversation had, and what was kind of the outflow of it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I had some. I am always trying to find men that have gone before me, and in multiple areas, business, family, faith, leadership, and learn from them. And so I was really fortunate right when I got back to Dallas to sync up with some gentlemen that were interested in helping younger guys like me figure out the right path. And so I had a lot of conversations with them just about kind of my life and my purpose and where I was headed and what I was doing. And they just always encouraged me like, hey, what do you want to go do? And what would that look like? And so, I mean, I literally spent a year or two working my way through that, and finally got to the point where there were some questions about, well, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, let's play it out, and that was really good for me to think about and go, well, the worst that could happen really isn't that bad. I mean, it might be bad in my head, but like the reality of it's not that bad. It's life. It just sometimes you try things, they work, sometimes they don't, and I think that holds a lot of people back, not just from starting a business, but there's a lot of just the fear of failure that holds people back. I know a lot of people use it as a motivational deal. Like, I don't want to fail and I'm going to go work real hard so I don't fail. But I think it holds a lot of, the negative of that is it holds a ton of people back from doing things that, they probably wouldn't do unless they just got the gumption to go out there and try. And so once I got over that, the wheels were in motion. I mean, we were moving.
So that was 2014.
Yep.
datacenterHawk.
Yep.
Becomes from vision to reality.
Yeah, sure.
So at that point in time, you were early 30s.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Early mid 30s, and assuming you got some confidence in your abilities as a leader, and had learned a few things. But what was the most challenging part of those early years of datacenterHawk? Or what is the things you learned that you thought I thought I knew X, but it turns out it was Y?
Yeah.
In that time.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a saying around here a lot that has kind of it started as a joke, but I think it's become something that I think is true, and that like if it wasn't hard, somebody else would have done it. And what we're doing is hard work. I mean, it's still hard. We're 5 years in. I don't want to trick anybody. Like, we're still hustling, man. I mean, every day we've got our tasks that we're trying to complete, and so it always. I think it takes longer than I think what I'm learning is, any path that you're on, most of the time, for 99% of the people out there, it takes longer than you think.
I think that's a great point of just battling the expectations. It seems like you can't click on, Bloomberg Business or Forbes or whatever else and see like, oh, this 23-year-old just got $1 billion cash out. And you just bombarded with that stuff on a daily basis. And you have to fight against the expectations, both in yourself and I think organizationally.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Because we can all look and be like, dude, where's our unicorn designation?
Yes. Yeah. And, I think the other thing that's interesting about that is I always think about like, you think of like startups in the way that the leader is
just such a sexy word, and let me tell you what it ain't.
And that the leader is personified a certain way. And, it's got to be a driver and this and that. And I've had to like take a step back and go, hey, what is my, I don't want to get caught up in that. I don't want to get caught up in the way that the world is supposed to think of, the way a business in their mind fits this box. Yeah. And the leader fits this box. So that's another thing is like I've had to go, hey, I've had to accept a number of things that I'm gifted at and do well. And I'm certainly like, I believe like, hey, I've got certain things I can offer to our business that no one else in here can, just like you have those things. And I look at myself and I go, there's some things like I should not be doing because I'm not gifted that way. And you know what they are. Our whole company knows what they are, you know. But it's just, I think it's getting comfortable with that and being like understanding that, and maybe it's hopefully having the humility enough to understand that like when you start a business, you wear all the hats. And, you know, maybe this is just a PSA to all people that are doing this. The quicker you can find competent people to give responsibility and delegation to, or delegate responsibility to, is it's freeing. It'll expand your organization faster than you could ever do on your own, and and I think it just helps with momentum.
Sure.
And so, you know, so I think that's one of the things that I look back on and go, I wish it would have done that faster. Finding people that we could really trust and give, you know, leadership responsibilities to and say, hey, go. You're going to do this better than I am. It's not going to be perfect, but go and get it done, and we'll, you know, figure it out as we go.
Yeah, as someone who you hired a year ago, I wish you'd done it faster, too. Could have been having this for 3 or 4 years going on now. No. So, you know, we talk about it. I'm looking over at our core values: hungry, humble, smart, proactive.
Yes.
You know, how did you come up with those?
Yeah.
If there's a backstory on some of those, or how those became refined to where they are today.
Yeah, and you know, if you've read, so Patrick Lencioni is a leadership kind of guru, and he had done some work around almost like a Jim Collins, you know, good to great study that Lencioni and his team did, and basically these were the traits. 3 of those 4 traits they found, you know, consistent across these organizations that they studied, successful organizations, with the, you know, that the people had humility, that they, and you know, even one of our team members in a leadership meeting the other day talked about like humility to them was that they, you know, they accurately thought of themselves and the, you know, the realistic light. You know, they were able to see like, hey, these are things I do well and these are things that I don't, and how can I improve what I'm, you know, and like that is, when you can do that, when you're an individual that can do that, I mean, that's one of the things we're working with our kids on right now, 13 and 9, 2 boys, and trying to help them understand, hey, I just want you to understand reality. And here's things that you are, you know, incredibly gifted in. And here's things that like we want to see you develop. And these are character traits we want to encourage you in. And we want to see, you know, this, you might be lacking here. It's just my job as a dad or a mom to help you see those traits, you know. So that's one thing on the humility side. But he basically found that these 3 traits were in, you know, hungry, humble, and smart. And then we added the proactive one, which is really around, we changed it from to proactive from move ball forward, which, you know, like what we do is, you know, one victory is 1,000 little victories that were happening 5 years ago. You know, I mean, like, and I think we laugh all the time about sometimes things just happen that are good, but the reality is like the reason that takes place is because of the little things done along the way to get to that goal line, you know, and you know, I'm a football guy, or think in the world of football. And so you just think about like every play in order to advance the ball 10 yards, there's like 50 things that have to go right for that to happen. It doesn't just happen. Yeah. You know, center's got another play, he's got to snap the ball right. No one can be penalized. The
one
left
of them
guard
screws up.
Yeah,
you know,
stops the whole thing.
It's on the offense or the defensive side.
Yeah,
you can
so
just foul up the whole thing.
So we just, you know, we're just trying every day around here to just move it forward just a little bit, just a little bit. So that's really where those came from, and you know, there's other organizations that have similar characteristics, but we talk about them a lot, and we hope, you know, that everyone here knows what they are and is doing their best. And listen, we're not going to hit them every time. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I do those things every day perfectly, because I certainly don't, but they're on my wall for a reason. And my thought is that if the guy in that office isn't being meaning me, isn't the one that's demonstrating those, then why would I expect other people to do it?
Yeah, so. I think in so many areas, like, we need to be reminded of things on a daily basis. Yeah. And otherwise they'll just kind of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and they're there.
And we need to constantly be taking our own temperature.
Sure.
And the temperature of each other. Say, hey, how are we exhibiting these values? If not, they're just aspirational.
Sure.
And we might as well put, hey, we want to be $1 billion company, and just write that on the wall. It doesn't make it any more true than if you didn't write it on the wall. But the constant attention that you give to that is what separates the men from the boys there. So, all right, I got 2 more questions.
Let's go.
You know, we talked about this at the top. Say, hey, one of the things we've done here is this Hawk Talk series where we're sitting down with leaders.
Yes.
And you ask a lot of them, hey, maybe on camera or off camera, hey, what are some of the things that have shaped your your leadership style. So it's just talk about a couple of those that have been really impactful to you over the years, and that you've taken away and gone and maybe internalized some of it and maybe baked it into your own philosophy.
No, I mean, we talked to data center industry leaders and we asked them different questions. What came to my mind, one was Clint Hayden, who's the chief revenue officer at QTS, talking about, how his dad influenced him along the way. And one of the things he mentioned about his dad, which I thought was interesting, was as he was growing up, he was watching his dad lead an organization in the role that he was in. And his mom, Clint's mom, said something to him about how, the people that are working for your dad, they always want to work for him. And there's a reason why. And so he was just talking about how he valued people, how he treated people really well. And it was interesting to see how Clint picked that up. That was really interesting. I think when you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, the Eddie Shooter interview that we did with Switch, he has a really interesting background, and just like the people that influenced him along the way, I thought was really interesting from a leadership style. And he certainly, it looks like is exemplifying those traits now today to where he is. But I think a lot of it goes back to just there are people. I mean, I think about this. I think so many times in our world we want to think about, we've got to go do these big things, or we've got to make commitments to do this stuff that's outside of our normal everyday stuff. And the reality is, like, you have opportunities every day to impact positively or negatively the people that you're around. And so from a leadership perspective, it's just personal leadership, right? It's just understanding that, hey, the people I come into contact with at work, like, that's probably one of the biggest opportunities I have to encourage, to challenge, to love on, to, push to be better. Maybe that's your biggest opportunity. If you're, at home with kids, like right now in that season, that's probably your biggest opportunity. If you're in college with your friends, that's probably your biggest opportunity. So it's just recognizing that day to day, every day, there's little opportunities here or there to personally lead yourself well and, impact other people. And so I think that's, and I think you've seen that through the people that I've interviewed and discussed. If they give you a history of their background, you can see that popping up, the people that they've interviewed or the people that they've impacted along the way.
And you can check those out again on our YouTube channel. There's a ton of them out there. They're great. Again, I think it'd be cool to put together a little compilation just of all the leadership-focused conversations you've had. So, and then last, I think anybody who's known you for a while, David, probably knows that one of the things that's really shaped you a lot is your faith. It has a really profound impact on who you are as a man, as a dad, as a husband, and as a business leader. So we talk a little bit about that. Like, what has that journey been like over the years?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in a Christian home, but then accepted Christ at a young age, and then just over time have had, been part of a church here in Dallas, and people I think that have just encouraged me in my faith, and it's been a journey, and I'm thankful that I've been in a situation where I can kind of see that I don't have it all together. I think that's one of the biggest things about the Christian faith is you recognize that, you need help, and there's areas that you just can't succeed in. And so, you basically accept Christ into your heart for, the fact that you're a sinner, and then you let him start going to work on you. And so I think every day I realize there's areas in my life that I need to, just be faithful with. And so that comes out in a lot of hopefully that comes out in our company. I mean, we don't talk a lot about like faith issues, but certainly we're trying to lead in a way that would put others above ourselves and would, honor the way that I believe that I should lead this company based on my faith. It impacts things like from a family perspective. So, how we parent and love our kids and challenge our kids and discipline our kids at times. Probably more times than I'd like to admit, and just from a community standpoint, I mean, really trying to figure out ways to impact people that we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. So, we don't talk about it a ton business-wise, but certainly not ashamed of it, and thankful that we're in a place that we can live that out and also admit that, like, hey, we don't do it right all the time. I mean, there's times that I blow it and I have to ask people for forgiveness and, and it's just, it's a process and, understanding areas where you want to grow and have areas to grow. I mean, it takes a lot of time and work, but it's worth it. And it's certainly something that is a big part of my life and, God willing, will continue to be.
And I would say, just as a friend and as a coworker with you,
Sure.
I think certainly see that come through.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage you in that. But a lot of the things, the principles that Jesus taught in the Bible, or that were in the Old Testament Proverbs, are just so applicable to business. It's like plans fail for lack of advice. With many counselors, they succeed. Oh my gosh, that's the fundamentals of management consulting. So, or like treat others how you want to be treated, or ask forgiveness when you screw up, like admitting when you're wrong. So many people are just unwilling to do that.
Yeah,
and I think it really hamstrings them.
Yeah, one of the first years or two that we were doing DatacenterHawk, I was working with somebody, and we got somebody on our platform, and the situation just did not go well. And I like had to take a hard look at myself, talk to our team. I was like, hey, what happened here? And then I just went back to the person. I was like, hey, we blew it. Like David Liggett, didn't do a great job here. And so we're just going to make this right. And and so we took the right steps, in my opinion. I think the person thought that we did as well. And we just humbled ourselves, owned what we need to own, tried to solve the problem. And, they're one of our largest customers today.
That's great.
And it wasn't not every story works out that way. But it was a great reminder to me that, like, people are just working with people. And if most of the time, if you do what's right, typically good things happen. Not always, but, and so it's certainly something for us to, I've shared that story with our team a number of times. It's certainly something that I'm focused on as a leader, on going, hey, are we doing the right thing and doing it in a way that honors others and hopefully helps grow our company in a great way. So,
and I think that specific example, you have to have a level of humility to say that, to take those steps. And so, you're not just going to accidentally stumble into that.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a result of a pattern of lifestyle that you've had. So, I think that's a great example of just, living that out.
Yeah. And having people, I think, that can speak into your world and help you problem solve and help you see things you can't see. So a lot of people, I think, in this role, the role that I'm in, would go, you're the leader, what you do is right, and all these different things. And I am the leader of our company, but, not all the time my thinking is right. I mean, and so it's good for me to help take what's up here and get it out to others and kind of listen and be able to formulate a good perspective because other people have some really valuable thoughts to add, especially now that we've grown our company. I've spent the last year really investing in people at our company that can now take the gifts they've been given and go do, greater things. And so I think that for me, I'm always reminded it's always good. And this is a great, it's almost like leadership 101, but to have people in your world that can help you think through work situations, life situations, et cetera. So you're not by yourself thinking through things and making the wrong decisions.
Great. Well, hey, that was really neat to
Leadership.
see where you've come from,
Yeah, man.
where we're at today. And again, it's a journey. It's never done.
Yeah.
So we hope that the podcast audience enjoyed this. Next podcast 23, we'll be back to our normal data center program.
Yeah. And I just hope that, like, if you're listening to this and you're in you're somewhere in the data center world or the business world, or maybe not, I just hope you recognize that, you've got gifts and talents that are, like, uniquely designed to just you. And so how those play out with the people that you interact with every day is, like, what a great purpose, great opportunities to encourage others, like we talked about, challenge others, to lead within your realm of influence and to do it really well, and that's a key component, man. If you get people in your organization that are doing that, I mean, these are the people that rise up to lead organizations and do things that have never been done. And so I don't know where you are or what you're doing, but from my perspective, and I know, Mike, you too, just from our perspective, we just want to encourage, I think that the goal today was hopefully to encourage people to lead well wherever they are.
Yeah. And again, in a look at the people that you're under leadership from. What can you learn from them? And it can be good or bad.
Sure.
You know, like,
You
hey,
bet.
when I'm a leader, I want to do those 3 things that I see doing really well. I'm not going to do those other things.
Yeah.
That have not helped me. So certainly the intentionality there is apt.
Love it.
So, all right. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you guys next time.